Okay, Chris Speaks back here today with Brandon Mosley for our BCS State of Alabama podcast. And we got U.S. Senate hopeful with us here, businessman Rodney Walker. Rodney, how are you, my man?
I'm doing very good. Thank you, Chris.
Hey, so my first question for you is, and I think it's something that I guess all people is wondering is, can you tell us why beef prices continue to go up, and is that hurting cattlemen as far as making a living goes?
So actually, it's not hurting cattlemen because it's actually helping. Beef prices have been low for many, many years, and it's always hung out around $1.75, etc. And now on the hoof, an 800-pound steer will bring around 365 to $4 a pound. We actually sold some this past week, a tractor trailer load. Um, the reason that I feel that beef prices continue to go up is because supply and demand. There's a lot less people growing cattle at this time than there was, say, 10 years ago.
Okay.
Um, Rodney, while beef prices are at record highs, commodity prices for like corn and soybeans seem to be nearing, record lows adjusted for inflation. I know beef is making money off of the cheaper grains, but are we concerned that we could have mass bankruptcies, especially like in the Corn Belt?
Yes, sir. That's a very good question. The, corn prices and soybean prices and other commodities are their lowest level since 1974. And we definitely have to find some way to fix that problem. Um, One of the problems is that China and other countries have usually bought our grain, and at this time, the tariffs are causing them to go elsewhere and buy grain where it's possibly cheaper. And so we got to find solutions. I spoke to a lot of different farmers uh, in our area and across the state. It's a band-aid, as far as a disaster relief may be what we need right now, but we've got to find a solution. And one of those solutions is to find other markets to sell our products to. For instance, South Africa, Indonesia, and other places that aren't buying grain or haven't bought grain from us in the past is a very good outlet. As far as um, grain to feed to cattle, I don't think there's a cattleman anywhere in the United States that would be worried if our prices went down 25 cents a pound in order to be able to save the American corn farmer and it went up to 5.50 a bushel.
Um, Another area that's hitting the grain guys pretty hard is, there's a growing movement to switch from high fructose corn syrup, which comes from the corn, and going back to sugar cane, most of which is imported or comes from Louisiana. Um, i- is there a concern that Washington, with maybe pushing, old fashioned sugar cane, may actually make the corn situation worse?
I don't think that sugar cane is a viable option because there's not enough places, in the world to grow sugar cane to fulfill the American corn supply where it is at this time. It's not just corn either. It's cotton is down to 60 cents a pound. Uh, Soybeans is down to around $7.50 a bushel. It's all the lowest it's been, and a lot of it is being affected by the tariffs, and there might have to be some renegotiation of tariff prices as they affect grain going to other countries. One other thing to note is that there's going to be a huge problem in the state of Alabama this year because of all the rain that there's a lot of acres that was not able to be planted, especially where cotton was normally planted, in the central and northern part of Alabama. There's a lot of acres that are not going to be planted this year that's going to cause a problem. As far as yesterday, there's an article out where Arkansas farmers are begging the U.S. government for disaster relief. It's drastic and it's all across the United States. If we don't do something quick, we're going to lose a lot of farms. And people have to understand that our food does not come from the grocery store, it comes from farms.
Well, let me ask you this. So I was buying some beef the other day and I seen something that said, on the package, pure grass fed. So what other kind of food are they feeding them, and how does that alter like the beef does that affect the
So
taste?
So there are different marketing avenues across everything. Just like Ford and Chevrolet versus Toyota or anything of that nature. We have Black Angus cattle, we have certified Black Angus cattle, we have Charolais cattle, we have Red Angus cattle. There's a lot of different marketing. Now, grass fed is one of those items that is a marketing thing. Some people prefer grass-fed beef. I myself, we raise grass-fed beef on our farm. That's the way it is when we ship it out. We're certified and audited for that. But all the way back to our forefathers, cattle are better finished on grain if you want a good steak that's got marbling in it. The only way that you can get marbling in a steak is to be finished on grain. Um,
Hmm.
and 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 it also cleans out the grass taste or whatever in cattle. But there
Yeah,
are
that
still, I'd like to add to that, there are still a lot of people that makes a good living off selling grass-fed beef and it's finished on grass. So it just differs if people want lean beef or if they want marbled beef. I myself prefer a very good marbled ribeye steak.
Me too.
Rodney, moving on to, other issues, how much bond debt does the US have that's what we had from years ago that's at a low interest rate that's about to mature and then roll over into a higher interest rate, causing, interest on the debt to increase from the $1 trillion a year we're paying now?
Brandon, I'm sorry, but I don't have that exact number. But what I would like to say is I wish that these tariffs that we're gaining that are bringing in billions and billions of dollars, I wish that that money was applied to our national debt to lower that down. I strongly believe that we need to balance the budget and not spend more than we have coming in. If we don't fix our budget problems and if we don't fix our national debt, we're just leaving a legacy for our grandkids that they're never going to be able to pay back.
So let me ask you this, Rodney. You've jumped in a race with, some big names. You got Attorney General Steve Marshall, Congressman Moore. There's rumors that Congressman Brooks is probably going to get in the race. I've even heard Judge Moore may run. How do you overcome these opponents' name recognition?
Well, I would like to say that I'm not a career politician. As a matter of fact, I'm not a politician. I'm a businessman and a farmer. And, our campaign is strictly a grassroots campaign, out seeing people and talking to people and, shaking hands the old-fashioned way. Yes, I don't have the same name recognition, and a lot of those people do. I do have friends all over the state of Alabama that I'm very proud of. I would say this, I feel like a lot of people in the state are tired of the same old bureaucracy, and we're ready for sending business leaders or people to see the working man's views to Washington and Montgomery.
Ronnie, in the 80s, if you remember, we had Ronald Reagan. One of the things he was elected on in 80 was building a 600 ship Navy, something that they accomplished. But then we, downsized the Navy as part of the peace dividend after the Cold War appeared to be over. Now we're struggling to build ships, and we're over a year behind on Virginia class submarines. The literal combat ships that they built were effectively a disaster, and we're retiring them as fast as they get built. And the Constitution, I mean, the new class of frigate is delayed. The Zumwalt class, apparently they're not going to increase those number of destroyers. And then the Ford class carriers cost multi-billions of dollars. What are we doing wrong that we apparently have forgotten how to build ships or can't hire people to build ships?
Well, There is a shipbuilding facility in Mobile. I'm very proud that Alabama is structured with we build airplanes, we build ships, we build cars, we build tractors, we build a lot of different things. Um, the problem from my perspective would be Ronald Reagan was one of the best presidents that we've ever had in the United States. At that time, we had a great working force of people. It seems like, after that, that we quit spending as much money on the military and we kept cutting. In the Obama generation, we closed National Guard armories and we closed bases and that type of thing. We've constantly reduced our military, and I don't like that. My grandfathers were veterans, my dad's a veteran. I believe that we need to spend money on the military, but the problem is that we cut and cut and cut. And, now we're at the point where we got to build it back up. We saw a parade of the 250th anniversary of the Army in Washington, and we have a lot of good equipment. But, as you mentioned, our Navy is deteriorating away, and we've got to fix that. Um, One problem I would like to say is we went through a generation after that where we took trade school out of our school systems. So we no longer taught people how to do welding, auto mechanics, carpentry, and all that type of thing. We thought everyone, needed to go to college and get a degree for a business associates or a legal degree and that type of thing. We've recently started working on teaching our kids back through trade and industry and so forth, community development. But we've got to work in the high school department to get our kids trained back on trade and welding and carpentry and all that type of thing to be able to put our workforce back to where it was before.
Rodney, if you got to Washington, is there a certain piece of legislation that you'd want to introduce first?
One of my first pieces of legislation, well, let me say this first. I would really like to succeed on the slot that Tommy Tuberville has on the Senate Agriculture Committee because I feel like that I could do a lot of work there. One of the first legislative bills that I'd like to introduce would be to bring all of our pharmaceuticals back to manufacturing in America instead of being manufactured in foreign countries. Right at this time, 72% of our pharmaceuticals are being manufactured in other countries. Some of those are our adversaries. That's a way to poison our country, and I believe all that needs to be made on American soil. I would introduce tariff legislation to bring all of that back to America.
Rodney, for most of modern history, um, the U.S., like most of the world, banned pharmaceutical advertising. We took away the ban, and now, you've got all these new and, supposedly better drugs that are on TV just constantly blasting their message, their message that this is a better treatment and it's cheaper, not cheaper, more effective and cooler, and you look cool and you can dance around like those people on the commercials do. But do we need to go back to banning pharmaceutical advertising because the share that the pharmacies, the drug companies get of our healthcare dollar, that percentage has ballooned. I mean, stuff here costs way more than in other countries. Is a lot of this artificial demand created by advertising?
Brandon, I don't know that we have to ban the pharmaceutical advertising. I do agree with you that it's almost every other commercial on TV. But the only thing is doctors still have to prescribe those. So the only way that you can get one of those drugs is by asking your doctor to change it, or and if he's in agreement with that and he's the professional, he or she is the professional that should, prescribe what you need.
Rodney, let me ask you this. We've had, the crisis on the border for years. You know, we've got the Ukraine war going on, threats. What do you think is the greatest threat to American security right now?
I think the greatest threat to American security still lies on our own soils. There are um, there are training facilities in Alabama. There are training facilities scattered across the United States where there are people that they own the property and so forth, so you can't go in and and take it out. But in other words, the training of our adversaries um, and people of that nature on our own soil is our greatest threat, in my opinion. I mean, we've got to get the foreign terrorists out of the United States, and I believe that that's one of the things that the government's working on right now. President Trump is, uh, there was allowed. We've allowed in the past 4 years for people just to walk across the border. A lot of those people were killers and murderers and released from jails in other countries. And so until we get those out of the United States, I feel like that's one of our greatest problems is right here on our own soil. I also want to bring up something that China and other foreign countries uh, own 1,298,000 acres of American farmland and timberland. And so it's been pointed out that we talk about it being right next to military base, but it's actually scattered all across the state of Alabama and all across the United States. Texas is the leader of foreign people owning land, foreign governments, and Alabama ranks number fourth in that.
Rodney,
Yes.
immediately after the Civil War, um, the United States Army occupied most of the Southeast. We were under a military occupation for about 11 years. Um, Following that, the end of that occupation, thanks to having some Southern senators in there who had just lived through that, we passed the Posse Comitatus Act, which prevented, the U.S. government from deploying U.S. troops on U.S. soils. Um, President Trump, you know, sent the National Guard and some Army forces to quell riots in LA. He's used military forces in the District of Columbia to, fight crime. There's talk about doing that in Chicago. Now, a federal judge has ruled that his actions in LA were illegal. The DC Attorney General is suing the administration, saying what they're doing in DC is illegal. Do we need to revisit Posse Comitatus and maybe overturn that to give the president more of a free hand to deal with, domestic insurgencies or out of control criminal activity?
I don't believe that we need to go back and overturn that. I do want to start off with the first quick statement that you had. You are right about the southeast. And so far, this farm that I have, if you go back and pull to the patents, there was sections of this property that was given to soldiers that fought, in the Civil War and so forth. That was Union soldiers and that type of thing. And then that land is disseminated down over the years. Uh, the court system, we have three branches of government. We have the executive and the legislative and the judicial. The court system, being the judicial, have to decide if that's legal or not. For President Trump to send in troops, I will say that mostly he sent in National Guard, military police in Washington. And then I would like to point out that according to the news that we see, the people of Washington, D.C. now feel safe and secure, and crime rates have gone down tremendously, and people feel able to go out in the city and travel and not be scared of being mugged and robbed. And I think that's very important. I think it's important because Washington D.C. is where our where leaders come from other countries to visit our nation's capital. And so that should be one of the safest areas in the United States. The only problem is that the Biden administration defunded a lot of the police. That was a big thing about defunding the police. So big cities have got to be able to build their income and have the money back to take care of the police officers and the sheriff's departments. I fully back the police and the sheriff's department, and I have served, 8 years as a pilot and so forth for our local sheriff's department here.
Rodney, we've seen that here recently, had a transsexual shooter, and we've had several of those, and there's a lot of blame. People say transsexual or white men, or then you got the inner city crimes. And I've seen President Trump he's wanted to ban transgenders from having weapons. Do you have an idea on how we can curb these shooting violences that take place?
Well, personally, I don't think that you can label any one group of people as the problem. What I do believe is that years ago that we defunded the mental institutions, and we defunded a lot of the mental health care. And we have some people that need treatment, that some of them need counseling and they need to talk to someone. And on top of that, the media has created, through gaming and so forth, all these games about shoot the police and shoot this up and shoot that up. A gun does not shoot itself. It takes somebody with um, a mental disability that needs to talk to someone and needs help that's pulling that trigger. And that has nothing to do with how a person identifies or anything of that nature. It has nothing to do with what race that people are, gender, or anything else. It has to do with a chemical imbalance in the brain, and we need to help those people. Brandon, your mic's there you go.
Along that same line, do we need to consider maybe banning first person shooter games? A lot of times they're shooting zombies or they're shooting aliens, but you know, games where you point at a screen all day long and you're just, creating mayhem with your pistol or an AR or something. Um, most of us can play that, and we don't want to actually live that in real life. But apparently, for a minority, that seems to be, you know, they take it too seriously, and then they want to go act out that fantasy.
So, I'm a strong believer that government needs to be smaller and not larger. And I don't know if we need to make a law about every single thing that there is. However, I do agree that we have a problem with games that constantly, all day long, shoot up the police or shoot up the city or whatever, and you get points for that. I believe after a certain amount of time that your brain becomes focused on that, and you just believe that that's what's right or wrong to do. I would like to say that I don't think that that's a minority issue. I think that's an issue all the way across the board. And I want to clarify this, I'm not against people gaming. There's a whole sector of people that love gaming and so forth. But I do want to point out this, that at 56 years old, my grandfather taught me at 4 years old how to properly use a weapon. We don't have training like that anymore, where a lot of grandparents or fathers or mothers or whoever go out and teach a child the proper way to use a weapon. A lot of people have weapons in their house. I have weapons in my house, but they're not where that somebody could just run up to them and grab them. And, a child that doesn't understand, it's like you want to take that weapon to school to show other kids, or you want to take it outside to show other kids. And then the next thing you know, you don't know how to use that weapon and somebody accidentally gets shot. And sometimes that's really what it is an accident. And then on the other hand, you have the people that buy their child an AR weapon that lives in a big city. We have, in Alabama, we have the CMP, the Civilian Marksmanship Program, that's between Birmingham and Atlanta, that people can go learn to use a weapon. There's other facilities that people could learn to use a weapon. We don't need to take away people's First Amendment rights or any other rights. We just got to learn how to teach people to use things like we was taught when all three of us were younger.
Rodney, you mentioned First Amendment rights there. A couple of days ago, we seen in London, a comedian went over, I think he made some tweets, and when he got off the plane, there were 5 armed police officers waiting to arrest him. The First Amendment's always been very, the most important. It's the first. With President Trump wanting to ban flag burning, is that an encroachment on our First Amendment rights that can, that we may lose more and more by doing that?
So that's a very touchy subject, and especially with me because um, I own Patriot Fueling Centers, and we have those all over the state. And one of the requirements for our stores, if you wanted to franchise one or anything else, is that you have to have a large American flag. I do not believe in burning the American flag. Again, my grandfathers, both of them made it through World War II, and my dad made it through Germany and Nicaragua and different places that he was sent. I have trouble even disposing of a flag naturally, what we're supposed to do, and that is to take it, and properly burn the flag. I have a lot of trouble just doing that because my heartfelt desire and the love for the flag. I don't believe that people ought to burn the flag. I believe it ought to be a crime that you go out and stomp on the flag and that you burn it. I don't think that you could go to another country and burn the flag and get away with it. Um, but you're moving it back to the First Amendment rights, and um, I just say that would be a point for argument.
Rodney, you've been in construction, you build some houses. Um, it seems like when we had like the Gulf Shores deal where ICE went down there and they inspected that premises, and there was like 50 illegal aliens down there working on that project. I know we all want to enforce the borders and control illegal immigration. Is there a risk that by, having more aggressive immigration enforcement, that we may hamstring our construction business and we won't have the roofers and the carpenters and the plumbers and, the bricklayers and all the things that it seems like, our contractors are relying on from illegal labor?
So I've talked to ICE agents, and the way that they go into an area, and you mentioned Gulf Shores, or any facility that they go to serve a warrant. That's a warrant for somebody that's committed a murder, that's committed a crime, and they go for that person. When they are there and there are other people, they cannot turn a blind eye, so they wind up checking the IDs of other people and arresting them. It's my understanding that they do not go to a certain area just to pick up 50 or 60 people because they see them on the workforce. To answer your question properly, uh, yes, it is going to impede. It's going to impede a lot of things. It will impede the construction industry. It'll impede the farming industry. It'll impede possibly the chicken plants. It'll impede a lot of things. The only trouble is this, is we have laws in place where people can come to America to work. Um, the H-2A program, there's good programs and so forth that bring people here properly. The only trouble is that we just opened up the borders and we just let people flood in the past 4 years. Not only did we do that, then we paid for them to be in hotel rooms. We give them cards for food. We give them medical care and all this type of thing. That is where the problem is, because I have a lot of friends that are of Spanish descent or other descent, but they are here legally, and they went by the proper channels to get here. I mean, even all the way to the top. President Melania, she came to America legally. Ursa Vance came to America legally. I believe strongly that the people that are here legally, that went through the due process, got their Visa card, got their green card, did everything they was supposed to do the right way, it bothers them and they feel discriminated against if somebody else can walk across the border and walk onto a job and not have to follow any other of the requirements. Everybody in America should be required to follow the law and to pay their income tax just like you and I do. And and if we do that, then our system will be fine. We'll have plenty of workers and no problems. But we just can't allow criminals to come in and infiltrate the United States illegally across the borders without any restraints, without any social security numbers, without any government regulation at all.
Rodney, Ronald Reagan declared the war on drugs, and since that time, it's been a losing fight. We've spent a treasure in blood and fortune. Now, here recently, we've seen President Trump have a strike on people that was bringing fentanyl or something over. Should we take the fight to these drug cartels using our military?
I believe we are taking the fight to the drug cartels when they're out on the open waters. At this time in the Gulf of America last week, I believe it was, or 2 weeks ago, there was one of those boats that was shot, devastated. I believe there was 7 to 9 people that was on board of that boat that were deceased. Um, we're not going to be able to go to Mexico with our armed forces and stop the cartels, but we're definitely going to be able to stop that from coming across our borders. Um, when they
So
build
you,
a wall and secure the border, you'll stop it from driving across. I think that we have a lot of inspections and things that are in place at this time. If trucks try to bring it over, I think that the Coast Guard does a great job, but there are a few boats that are sneaking through. I don't think there's any way to get an aircraft across that's hauling drugs, but everything, no matter what there is, there'll always be some infiltration. But I think President Trump's doing a great job of stopping the drug cartels from shipping fentanyl and things in to our people right now.
The same lines. Um, you can execute drug dealers, you can do whatever, on the supply side, but there's always somebody who, if they're going to live that lifestyle and have millions of dollars and women and cars and, jet boats and jet planes. Hey, we'll accept that they're going to spend the last 20 years of their life in prison, or that they're going to go for a firing squad at some point or something. They'll still do it because, they're not thinking long term. They just want that short term, I've arrived, I'm making money deal. To really control drugs, do we need to raise the penalties on the casual user, like the college student who's buying the cocaine that's trafficked from Venezuela, or the person who's, buying the illegal marijuana that the Mexican cartel is shipping over here in tons? Um, if we made life harder on the American consumer of the illegal drugs, would that accomplish more than, constantly attacking the supply side.
So yes, it would, but here's the other side of that double-sided sword. We don't have enough prisons and we don't have enough resources to put those people. I mean, drugs, fentanyl, opioids, everything else is a huge problem. And it's not segregated to one race, it's not segregated to one gender, it's not segregated to one people. It's everybody as a whole, and it strikes almost every family. Um, so I don't think that we would have enough jails or prisons to put those in. But back to the rules of supply and demand. If you cut the supply off, the demand has to go away because like if you can't get it, the problem solves itself. And I know exactly like you said, you've got these people that have big fancy cars, big fancy boats, big fancy jets, fancy women, everything, but and they're able to pay off people. And we've got to find a way to stop that. But if you cut the supply off, you will end the demand. You just got to cut all the supply off.
Rodney, one of the big new things here in technology is artificial intelligence. I think it has potential to be great and maybe some things awful, but it looks like it may cost us a lot of jobs. Do you have a way to, or an idea of how we can circumvent those losses?
AI is a great thing. I think a lot of us are looking into ways to use AI. Um, I don't believe that it's really going to cost us a lot of jobs. If we go back to what we was just speaking about the different jobs that we don't have enough people for right now, like agriculture or anything for that matter, any manufacturing job. Um, there's robotics and all that type of thing in car manufacturing and so forth now, but still we have thousands of people working in car manufacturing. Even though the robots might spray the paint, they might do the welding on some, you still have to have people to fix the robots. You've got to have people to bring the paint to the robot and put the hose into the can. Um, I don't believe AI is going to like demolish the entire workforce. I think that bringing jobs back to America, like Trump's trying to do, and other people are trying to do, there are plenty of jobs for people if they want to work. And the government kind of has to get out of the job business, the business, the manufacturers and the business people, they're the people that needs to hire, the people. We need to get people off of welfare rolls and stuff like that and get them to work. I do not believe that AI is going to take away jobs. I believe it helps you to write letters. It might help with some trading things. It helps with different things, but I don't believe it's going to take away any jobs. In my
Rodney, those of us who are over 50 remember the Cold War, and we remember, I mean, there were whole U.S. divisions, some of which don't exist anymore, that were based in Germany. There were F-4 fighters, with nuclear weapons based in England. There were U.S. troops, with heavy weapons in Turkey, all to contain, the Soviet Union. The wall fell, the Cold War is theoretically over, and it seems like Russia is more of a threat now to cause trouble than it was almost as much as it was back in the 80s. Do we need to reassemble that massive U.S. presence in Europe that was a thing from the 50s, 60s, 70s, all the way up to about 1990? Or does Europe need to take, a more of a role in their own defense?
So I am one of us that's over 50, and I do remember the Cold War. Um, I would assume that a lot of that military equipment probably got sold or disseminated to other nations, and I wish that we had a lot of that back. Um, I think personally, President Trump is a very good peacekeeper. I'm not just tooting his horn. I'm trying to say that for the first time that I can recall in my lifetime, President Putin and President Trump have met. That all the countries seem to be coming together at the table. They may not come together at the same time, like then Putin went and had a meeting with China and other countries. I don't feel like that Russia is a larger threat to the United States now than they ever have been. And I want to say something that you may disagree with, but as we saw the war in Ukraine progress, we saw in the beginning or through the war, we saw tanks from Russia running out of gas, being parked, drug around by Ukrainian farmers with tractors. Russia is a force to be reckoned with, but probably China and Japan are forces that we should have our eyes on more. My granddad said that at the end of World War II, that China and Japan would take over the United States without ever firing a shot. That's what they said. Um, and we have let them ease in to different spots in our country and take over a lot of things. And that goes all the way back to the very beginning of this conversation where we was talking about that they bought a majority of our grain. Now they're not buying the grain. We're about to put all the farmers out of business. They're buying up our land, all that type of thing in our own country. But to answer your question again, I don't think that Russia is a worse force to be reckoned with now than there was in the Cold War. I actually think that at this point in time that everybody seems to be coming to the table and President Trump trying to have peace around the world. There is less I hope that there's less fighting today than there was the day before. I know that we still have pockets. I know that the Gaza Strip, that there's trouble in the Gaza Strip. But as far as Ukraine and Russia and different countries like that, they're on the verge of having a peaceful settlement and negotiation. It's just got to have the things worked out. And that's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take some time. But at least there's not 5,000 people dying every day now.
Ron, you mentioned Putin. He went and had a meeting with Xi and um, oh God, I'm drawing a blank on the North Korean leader.
Yes, sir.
Um, are you not concerned because Russia and China have traditionally been at odds with each other? You're not concerned that this alliance they're making is going to be something we're going to have to face in the future?
I am concerned with that, but I think that through proper negotiations and treaties and all sitting at the table and working together, that we can get that taken care of. We just don't need to turn a blind eye. You see, the past 4 years, everything there was no law and order around the world. Everybody was just free to do what they wanted to, and I feel like that we were kind of run over a bit. But in the past 9 months, um, we're beginning to see peace, and we see things coming back in line, and people being more calm around the world. We don't see nuclear warheads going off everywhere. I mean, there's been a lot of things that's been accomplished in the past 9 months, but nothing is going to be accomplished in one day. It's going to take some time to make it all happen. But I do want to say again, we do not need to have closed eyes to Russia, China, or Korea. We need to keep eyes on everyone. But that doesn't mean that we need to go and put warships out there pointed with weapons at them, like if you don't do what we say, we're going to start shooting.
Rodney, um, we had an issue with Venezuela now for almost like 20 years, ever since Hugo Chavez was elected, and then his gang of thugs just started overturning elections and, just trampling the minority rights, the political minority, actually probably the political majority, but they don't have fair elections that are opposed to his regime. They're importing drugs and crime into our country. They've weakened us. I mean, in other countries, they're funding anti-Americanism around Latin America. Do we just need to go ahead and send the Marines and overturn that regime once and for all?
Well, I say that we need to try a little longer with peaceful negotiations or sanctions and that type of thing. But if that's what it comes to bring people, to bring the countries in line, rather than being the bully of the world, yes, sir, that's what we'll have to do. But I don't think it's the time for that right now.
Rodney, being a cattleman, in your ties, do you, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Christopher.
Okay, Rodney, do you think, are you going to do you think you'll be able to get the Alpha endorsement and be able to parlay those ties into campaign, donations?
So I've been a member of the Farmers Federation since 1985. I was OYFF, which stands for Outstanding Young Farm Family in the Beef Division, in I believe 1988. Then I actually was on the State Young Farmers Committee, which is like a Young Farmers Board for the state. There was 7 members on it, and I served on that capacity, I believe, 4 years. I was on there with Jimmy Parnell and Andy Winland and a lot of other great people and there's great friendships that went through that. I would absolutely love to have the Farmers Federation endorsement. I believe I'm the only candidate that's running that understands the values and the morals and the business of farming. I align myself with the values of the Farmers Federation, and I feel like that I would be the best candidate for that endorsement. Um, I I don't feel like the other candidates deserve that endorsement or would be qualified. They would just be only going by the answers that their staff along the next 6 years told them that was the right way to vote. Um, I have no PAC money in my campaign, so in other words, I'm not swayed one way or the other by anyone at this time. But I would absolutely desire and be very thankful for the Farmers Federation endorsement and also the Cattlemen's endorsement. The Alabama Cattlemen's Association doesn't endorse people on the federal level. That goes to the National Cattlemen's Association, which is NCBA, and I'm also a member of the U.S. Cattlemen's Association. I would very much love all those endorsements. I would love the endorsement of the Sheriff's Association, but the state doesn't. They only endorse candidates, that's inside the state, not federal.
Along that same lines, you have the largest gooseneck trailer dealership in the Southeast. You've got the rock quarry. You've got the Patriot fuel system, centers. Um, you're a home builder. Do you think any of that may sway like the Business Council of Alabama or the Home Builders Association or any of the big Montgomery-based PACs to look at your campaign rather than some of the insider candidates like Steve Marshall or Barry Moore?
Well, I'll tell you, I certainly do hope so because I didn't join the Farmers Federation today. I've been a member of that for 40 years. Uh, and it's actually not the home builders. I'm actually an Alabama general contractor, which is, a slight bit different. They changed those laws several years ago. I understand contracting with the rock quarry. I'm not a member of the Alabama Road Builders Association, but I understand what it takes and how they they perform. I'm fully familiar with being out on those jobs. I did work for APAC for several years. Um, yes, I feel like that I fully align with every one of those institutions that you mentioned. And I feel like that those people would want somebody that understands their values and understands what it takes to get the job done. I feel like that the whole bureaucracy needs to be changed, and we need to send back business leaders and farmers to Washington and to Montgomery. I think that we ought to get away from the point about who's got the most money in their kitty, because I mean it just gets piled full with PACs and people that want you to vote a certain way. I mean, my values, my views, my whole being is aligned with the business people of the state of Alabama, including the blue collar workers. I mean, I'm not above anybody else. I'm right there with people. I don't mind getting in a ditch and digging. I don't mind running a piece of equipment. I don't mind flying the helicopter. I don't mind doing whatever's got to be done. I can operate a bulldozer. I can do a lot of things. God's blessed me with a lot of different talents. And and I just want to serve and help the people of Alabama. And I want to get past all this bought and paid for career politicians, people that forget where they came from, people that won't answer the phone, and people that don't really care about the people that they're elected to represent. I want to change that. And I really, really believe that Trump is a good example of how an outsider that's not a politician can come into Washington and make a difference. And I think that I could go up there and work as hard as I do here on business, and I could make a difference too. One person can make a lot of difference. They can't do it all, but they can make a difference. And that's what I want to do.
Well, you talk about career politicians, dominating government. Would you commit to serve only 2 terms or 1 term or 3 terms?
I've signed a pledge, and it's online and posted. It is by termlimits.com, I believe, and you can find that online. I'm the only person that signed that pledge that's running for state Senate. I mean, U.S. Senator. I'm the only person in this state that signed one that's running for U.S. Senator. I may be the only person even that covers in the representatives, but um, I would commit that I only want to run 2 terms. And the trouble with that is this is what you run into is then the big folks, the people with all the money that are out there, they want to back somebody that's going to be there for 20 or 30 years, because honestly, once they buy them people, they feel like that they're in their pocket from then on. I'm not for sale. I admire something that Tommy Tuberville did when he said ahead, and it took any PAC money. All the money that he's got for his campaign has come from people wanting a leader and not a politician. And so yes, I fully support term limits, not just for myself, but for other people too. And don't get me wrong, I think people that are there have done great things, but it's time for a lot of the older people to retire and let some young blood come in, just like things that we've talked about in this interview or podcast. A person that might be 80 years old that's representing our country does not understand AI or different things of that nature. Yes, there's people on their staff that can help them and try to understand that, but as to our country to run efficiently needs new blood involved in all aspects of it. And that's where I'm at.
Rodney, we've kept you over 50 minutes. Yeah, I could keep asking questions, but probably need to refrain from doing that. Is there something you would like to add that we haven't covered?
Hey, let me ask you one more question though, before he says that. Hey, Rodney, I forgot to ask you this earlier. You talked about that you like a good ribeye with marbling on it, and that's my favorite too. How do you like it cooked?
I like it medium.
Okay, I'm a medium rare guy myself.
Well,
Sorry.
I like it medium, but that's a that's a warm pink center and so forth. But
Yeah.
I love ribeye. I'm not I like hamburger meat and stuff like that, but ribeye is absolutely my favorite cut of meat, and I, honestly, I loved a good ribeye. My wife can cook a good ribeye. I can grill a good ribeye, and um, that doesn't make me better than anybody else. I hope everybody goes and gets some a good ribeye this weekend. So to answer your question, Brandon, um, it's been a very good podcast. I think we have went over a lot of questions and hopefully give a lot of good answers at the same time. I'm very thankful that you let me be on here today, you and Chris both. And I don't think I have anything to add except I would love and appreciate each person in the state of Alabama to really look at the candidates. And I encourage you to vote for a business leader and a farmer and not a career politician, not someone that's bought and paid for by big dollars, and not fat cats in Washington. Um, I'd love to be your next senator, and I promise you that I will work very hard for you. And as you heard Chris in that, Brandon in that speech that I gave in Oxford, I no matter how dark it gets, no matter how cold it gets, I don't give up on my people, and you're my people. And I want the opportunity to work for you. And I appreciate y'all letting me be here today.
Thanks for
Thank
coming
you
on,
so
Rodney.
much
I'll
for
have this
being
up
on.
in just a few. Sorry, go ahead, Brendan.
Oh, I just said thanking Rodney for being on.
Oh
Thank
yeah, thanks. Yeah, most definitely thanks. And I'll have this up on YouTube in a couple hours, and I'll send it to you, and you can share it in your social media. And good luck in your race.
Thank y'all so much. If I can help you any other time, please let me know. Bye
Yes,
bye.
sir.
Bye bye.